Hi, I'm Zack.
And I'm Diana.
And we are the Farrier's Bellows, a podcast dedicated to bringing you games and tools to take your adventures further.
We're going beyond the familiar, talking about non-traditional indie RPGs, some that have been around for years, others that are newer.
Today, join us as we complain to HR about that weird ectoplasm smell in InSpectres. Our first segment is the Call to Adventure. InSpectres is a game by Jared Sorensen. Mm-hmm. It is very popular, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Among Forge games.
Originally, it came out in 2001, but we played an edition from 2009.
Yes, the earliest references I can find to InSpectres are from 2001, although I don't exactly know what form it took back then. I do know that the most common form that most people have seen, which is the small green booklet with the ghost on the cover, is copyrighted 2009, and that's about as long as I've had it.
Right, yeah, that's true. InSpectres is a comedy horror game. It comes out of the Forge. Yeah, and it's just a game about, I mean, it's Ghostbusters meets Parks and Rec, where you are paranormal investigators dealing with red tape bureaucracy and also fighting ghosts.
Yes. So, like, the core of the game is asking, what kind of person quits their day job to professionally hunt ghosts, goblins, and ghouls? Mm-hmm. I would say that's where it comes in, but that's not entirely the meat of the game. What the game does really well is explore mystery and collaborative storytelling in a way that is fantastic for comedy, I think.
Absolutely.
No one quite knows where the story is going to go, and it creates this really funny, really absurd fish out of water story where you have generally fairly normal people dealing with super abnormal circumstances. It is very much in the Ghostbusters vein or the Parks and Recreation vein, or even like The Office.
It's kind of both.
Yeah.
It mixes. I think it does a really good job of mixing those two things.
Mm-hmm. Your character is very bare bones in a lot of ways. You have 4 stats: academics, athletics, technology, and contact. You have 9 points at character creation that you can divide up between those 4 stats anywhere from 1 to 4. And that's it.
Yeah.
Those 4 stats do exactly what they say on the tin. Academics is how smart you are. Athletics is how strong. Technology is both your ability to get tech and your ability to use tech, and contact is your ability to meet with people. Those stats never grow or increase. You don't really have character growth in this game. Instead, what you are doing, and what the real meat of the game is you're trying to improve your company. In the book, it is InSpectres, but we made up our own company.
Right, yeah.
And your company also has stats in between its bank, its gym, which you can use to augment your athletics moves, its gold card, and its library card. These are the stats that you're actually increasing, your company stats that everyone can kind of tap into and try to do better.
Now, it's misleading to say that your stats don't ever change, because they don't really, but stress can manipulate them in that session, in that moment.
Yes, they can decrease over the course of the game. Instead of harm, whenever you get hurt, your stats go down, right? Through a stress mechanic.
Right.
So let's talk about some things that we liked. First off, I like that there's a lot of character creation freedom when you're making your characters. Since the characters are so bare bones, you can make any sort of office employee that you want, which maybe sounds very limiting, but we had everyone from an intern to an HR department member to people who were field agents. Mm-hmm. It felt very kind of Archer-like in that you had all these people being put outside of their normal circumstances.
We had a social media contact and I was this nobody who just randomly joined and had a random paper pusher job.
Yeah. So I like that the characters you're making are different in that they are very normal people, but because it's so basic, you can get basically whatever you want,
right,
and put anyone in these absurd circumstances.
Right. I really like the simplicity of the character sheet itself. I really like that there's not a lot to keep track of. All the information that you need, or most of the information that you need, is on the character sheet itself. And it's just a really cute, it looks like a file, and it's your application is, I don't know, it's a cute It's a cute character sheet, but it's simple because we only have those 4 stats, because we don't have a lot going on in character creation. The sheet can have all the information that you need on it, and I really enjoy that. I don't like having to go through pages and pages to find the move that I'm making and then the consequences if I don't roll well. I play those games, I enjoy those games, but I really like that this game isn't that. All of the information I need is on one page, and I can see it, and I can always be remembering it, and it's just really, I don't know, simple. I enjoyed that.
I really like the way the testing works. So if your academics skill is rated 3 and you need to do research, you just roll 3 dice and you take the highest number and you compare it to the skill roll chart. Mm-hmm. And what I really like about that is the higher your roll doesn't necessarily mean that you get the thing that you want. It means that you get to describe what happens.
Yes.
So if someone is researching whatever ghost ectoplasm they found at the scene, mm-hmm. and they get a high roll of a 6, that player gets to tell the GM what that ectoplasm belongs to, not the other way around. It's not that the GM says, okay, you did good, this is what it was.
Right.
The player gets complete narrative control. And I think that A, makes for a very funny game, and B, makes for a good mystery in that no one at the table knows exactly what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And kind of along that same veil, I really enjoy the confessional. So a part of this game is that at any time you can, and there are rules to how many times you can do it and how many people can do it in a scene and all that stuff. But at any time you can step out, and much like on a reality TV show, when you're in a chair by yourself in front of the camera, you can say, oh, it's a great thing that I had talked to my friend Billy and had a crowbar in my backseat. Or, did you know that some coffee comes from animal poop? And then that has to be incorporated into the story. Mm-hmm. That fact that you just said, or that little like tidbit of something that you just said in that confessional has to be included in the story. And I just think that's so great because it gives the players an opportunity to tell the story.
It's very good for comedy, and it's very good mm-hmm. for narrative control. It gives you a little bit of control over other players' characters as well. This is a game that very much wants everyone to give up a little bit of control for the sake of the story.
Right.
Which I think might clash with some people's kind of expectations. Like, mm-hmm. In some games, I wouldn't want you to have control and like tell me that my character is overly flirtatious.
Right.
But in a comedy game like this, I think it's something that you need to be able to step into and just like improv and roll with the punches and go to absurd lengths.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Another thing I really like about this game is that the characters don't improve, only the franchise does. Mm-hmm. I think that plays into this idea that the characters are mediocre and they are basically cogs in the machine. Yeah. And I like that as a theme.
They are just office workers.
I don't like that in my real life, but I like it in this game.
Yeah. I really like the franchise dice. So I've got the stats from my mediocre character that I'm playing, but because I'm a cog in this machine, I can borrow resources from the machine to get things done, and I really enjoy that. The franchise dice are kind of like wild cards. You can just, I mean, again, there are rules for how you use them, but you can grab a die or two and be like, I really want to kill this monster and my athletics are not good. I'm going to borrow some franchise dice and I'm going to see if this happens. And I just really enjoy that because that adds another layer of collaborative storytelling, because you don't just want to take them, you want to talk to your players before you do it. I don't know. I just really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Or you don't talk to your fellow players before you do it, and you just say, I'm using these gym dice to do this thing. I think when you're playing with new people, they are scared to take the franchise dice. Mm-hmm. They want to do things on their own. And then you start realizing that it's harder than you would think to do things on your own. You need to rely on the company, which is a dark theme the more I think about it. Which actually I think kind of plays into my next point that I really like about it. The game makes bureaucracy a major antagonist in its own right. Mm-hmm. The damage that you take in this game is referred to as stress, and stress can take any form, from not getting an email back from your boss, to getting stuck in traffic, to getting hit with a pole by a Wendigo. The fact that your boss has as much control over your health as the monsters you're fighting is really funny to me and really powerful to me. And I think that works really well, that you can make the bureaucracy and you can make the corporate culture an antagonist alongside these things that could be legitimately scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I just really liked the reality TV aspect of it. Knowing that I could do the confessional, knowing that this is supposed to be like a Parks and Rec for the Ghostbusters team, like knowing that that's what this is supposed to be, changed the way that I created my character and changed the way that I played my character. And I think I leaned more heavily into the comedy aspect, and I had a very different experience playing this game than I do most of my games. I just enjoyed that. I enjoyed having the confessional in my back pocket to change the story. I enjoyed that this story was supposed to be entertaining. Because it's a reality TV show, it's supposed to be entertaining.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that.
We already touched on this a little bit, but in playing off of that, no one has 100% control over this story.
Right.
The GM sets up a mystery, but there is no telling where that mystery is going to go, whether the witnesses are reliable, based on the very fact that a player getting a high roll could say, oh, nah, this guy, he doesn't know what a vampire is. This is for sure a chupacabra. On top of that, the confessionals to be able to put in a story beat and say, this is what happened later on.
Yeah.
But like I'm flagging this thing to make sure it's important. Since everyone has story, not breaking, but story bending control, it does mystery really well. And that also helps with the comedy as well, because no one knows what to expect.
Right.
I think these are two genres that are very hard in RPGs to get right, because if you're trying too hard to build a mystery or you're trying too hard to build a comedy, then you might, like, what you think is funny might not translate. You might try and flag the comedic or the mysterious elements too hard, and then they just fall flat.
Right.
This game does absurd so well by giving everyone equal control.
Yes. Yeah, I really enjoyed that you built this franchise together with the GM, with the other players on your team. In those moments where you take a little bit of that control and you kind of guide it, you are saying how this business runs. You are saying how this business operates and how it's represented out in the world. And since the business is kind of the main character, I really enjoyed that every person at the table got a say in how that character develops and how that franchise develops.
Did you have any questions about anything? Like, was there anything that didn't feel clear to you, or that you still had some questions about concerning this game?
So, we didn't play with weird agents. That is a thing that you can play with in the game. So, when you create a character, you're supposed to create a normal character, a semi-normal person who happens to do this for a job. But there is the option to play a weird agent. And they are people they're just weird. They are weirder people. They are not the normal run-of-the-mill people.
Well, there are things like vampires, werewolves, vampire hunters, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right, exactly. But we didn't play with those. However, I do wonder, if we had played with them, how would the game have changed? Because I think it would have changed.
Oh, for sure. They function a little bit differently. They have more dice, and they start the game with cool dice, which are what you use to avoid stress.
Right.
And you can also use them to augment other rolls. But when you roll cool dice, a lot of like weird things can happen, and they also work like a currency. You can gain and lose them.
Right.
I could see a weird character definitely stealing the spotlight.
Yes, and that's what I worried about. I wondered if a weird character would then be the person that everybody relied on to get things done, or if they just would end up being their own kind of freak show next to our normal, air quotes, normal people. So I kind of just wondered how that would affect it. And then also, so like my second question was, how do you keep the players from devolving into a silly mess of not taking this seriously? Because it still is a game and there still is an objective, right? And if there's a weird character, if there's that weird agent, does that get harder to do? Yeah.
I was wondering, along those same lines, like keeping it from not devolving, how do I encourage, as a GM, how do I encourage my players to actually get stressed out about the things that they are rolling stress over, right? When we've played, I've had a lot of players who I would be like, your boss didn't show up for your one-on-one. And in real life, that's incredibly stressful for your boss to like schedule a meeting with you and then just not show up. And we currently have like in gaming, we typically think of things as like fiction forward first, right? So my players would just be like, oh, okay, whatever, I don't care. But I wanted to make them roll for stress, but they didn't think that that was a thing that would stress them out. But I think that's a way that you kind of keep your characters grounded.
Right.
So I felt like I needed to be pushing stress a little bit more, and I wasn't sure how often I should be pushing stress. Like, how do I encourage players to actually be stressed out about things?
Right.
And how often should I be doing that? Should I be doing it a lot? Because on the same token, it felt like our characters were very starved for cool points. You only earn cool points by getting a 6 on a stress roll. So if I say, all right, roll for stress because your boss didn't show up. If your high roll is a 6, you're fine, and you also get cool points so that you can resist stress later on.
Right.
But it seems like once you start losing those cool points, or once you start losing that stress, or once you start gaining stress, it kind of felt like a death spiral.
Right.
And I wasn't quite sure how to balance that.
Right. And because that death spiral is a real thing that really happens to real people. And vacation is a thing that you take in this game because you are so stressed.
Yeah.
But how do you make that balance? Because people don't death spiral the first day of work every day of work, right? Like there is a balance, there is a buildup, there are highs and lows, and that fluctuates all day long, all week long. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you?
I know we touched a little bit on it, but like encouraging especially newbie players to use that franchise dice, to use the dice that are available to them, to use all of those resources. I think that's a big deal.
One thing that stood out to me was the number of supplements and hacks that are available for this game. It's been out for a long time, and Jared Sorensen has released quite a few supplements that change the genre of the game, change some of the mechanics in a way that allow you to explore different ideas.
Yeah.
So there's Ward 13, which is particularly interesting to me. It's like a paranormal medical drama type scenario. There's also Unspeakable, which is more of a harder horror Lovecraftian thing, where I think instead of stress you have sanity, the classic dealing with sanity trope.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I would be interested in playing around with those at some point.
Yeah. The importance of the confessional chair really stood out to me. I don't think enough of us used it to further the storyline. I think a lot of us used it to flash back to make sure that we had a thing that we needed. But using it as a way to drive the story, I think is really important. And that really stood out to me.
Yeah. Nobody has, in games we've played, has used it to give another character a characteristic.
Yeah.
Which I think is a shame. I think that is something that people should kind of lean into.
Right.
I think people were nervous to dictate what another person's character is like.
Right.
But I think if you are open to that and free to roll with that, it can create something very fun.
Oh, I agree. I also think there's no direct character improvement. It's all franchise improvement. I think that is like super interesting and super makes this game stand out, I think, in a really interesting way.
I also think the game keeps pace really well. The way your missions go is that your characters have to earn a certain number of franchise dice to finish out the mission. So say in a one session, I will say that you need to earn 15 franchise dice to finish off this mission.
Right.
You can earn franchise dice at any time, right? So you can earn franchise dice through researching, through fighting the monster, through doing whatever. You earn 1 franchise die on any 5 roll and 2 franchise dice on any 6 roll. So I had a very clear idea of where we were in the session at all times because I could see how many dice we had earned. And at the start of the game, I knew how many dice that we all needed.
Right.
And it kept the game moving forward. It kept it propelling in a way that felt very natural to me.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. All right, now it's time to approach the Inmost Cave. So here's where we talk about an issue or a theme that the game kind of explores. And this game definitely explores the absurdity and difficulty of navigating the corporate culture.
Yes. I think that's something really interesting to me that InSpectres does. I can't think of another game, except for maybe Paranoia, which I have not played, that centers around bureaucracy and corporate culture the way InSpectres does.
Right.
And does it so elegantly and so purposefully and hilariously as this does. Which is kind of shocking to me because it is such a prominent concept in popular culture.
Yeah.
That the fact that there's no games that circle around this is really kind of shocking to me.
And I wonder if it's because people are trying to escape it. Like, I know the first thing I do when I come home is I just start complaining about work. And most of my complaints have to do with the bureaucracy of it all, or the corporate culture of the school that I work at. But I don't know that I want to play a game that takes place in that world.
Yeah, but you'll come home and you'll put on, not to spoil the things that we're going to talk about later, but you'll put on Superstore or Parks and Rec.
That's true.
Or some people will put on The Office. No. Not in this house, but someone will.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
I think people want to revel in the frustrations of corporate culture because it is something that they can connect with on a personal level, and it's not there. Like, it's easy to laugh at someone else's pain. I think there's a little bit of like Schadenfreude in it.
No, I think you're right. No, I think that's right.
I think when we were first talking about this, we kind of argued a little bit about what exactly we mean when we're talking about bureaucracy and corporate culture.
Right.
And what we kind of settled on was that corporate culture is the culture that develops in a company through employee interactions and their relationships, through the policies of the company, through the way the company treats its clients and its employees, and just the day-to-day minutia of being in a workplace.
Right.
Going to a place of employment and dealing with people and all of the weird, strange, frustrating things that happen therein.
Right. Because I was pushing back a lot on using the term corporate culture because I don't work. Spoiler alert, I totally do. But when this conversation was happening, I didn't think I worked in a corporate culture sort of place. But I work in the public school system. I absolutely work in a corporate culture sort of place. Every school and every school district has its own culture that is either toxic or helpful. And the people around you absolutely influence it. And the parents in your neighborhood absolutely influence it. And the students in your neighborhood absolutely influence it. Like, that definition that we settled on fits for what we're talking about, because that's just day-to-day life. That is working anywhere.
Yeah. So how does InSpectres try to get this across, right? Because this is something that is very intentionally trying to explore this space.
Right.
And it's a space that is not often explored in role-playing games.
Right.
So what does this game do to kind of get you in that mood, get you in that presence?
Well, I mean, just the fact that the characters don't improve, but the franchise does. Earning the franchise dice, the bank. You're working for the company, so the company's the one that gets all of the rewards or the debt of your successes or failures. Yeah,
that's so true. Oh, man, I didn't think about, like, the fact that you are putting your life on the line, going out and fighting a Wendigo with probably underfunded equipment.
Right.
And then you're not really seeing the rewards for that. Your company is.
Right.
Your franchise is seeing the rewards to that.
Right. You might get a bonus, maybe, but it's your job, so you probably won't.
Well, I mean, there's no bonus mechanic.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, like, in the real world, right? Like, if this was really going to happen, putting your life on the line, you might get a bonus, but if that's the job you signed up for, you probably don't.
Yeah. And everything that you earn in this game is going back into the franchise to make the franchise better.
Right.
Which in turn will make your job easier, hopefully, but not really, because that just means you're going to take on bigger and bigger jobs and keep your same level of stress going throughout.
Yeah.
You're never really finished.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you just don't get to take any of it with you. Even if you, like, you know, left and were like, I'm going to start my own InSpectres franchise. You don't take any of that quote unquote glory with you. You already did what you did for that franchise. All of those advancements happened to that franchise. If you're going to start over, you're starting from the bottom. It doesn't matter that you're the world's best Wendigo fighter. You're starting from the bottom. You don't get any of those advantages.
Yeah. And those stressors really add up, especially if you are going hard with them, which I think you can. And I think that's still, I need to work on figuring out what the balance of that is.
Right.
But when you are presenting potential stress to a character based on all of the normal stressors that anyone faces while dealing with your fellow coworkers, with your boss, with interactions with clients, all of that is incredibly stressful. I don't know about any of y'all out there, but anytime I have a meeting with my boss, if it is 5 minutes long and it goes really well and they love all of my suggestions and they think that I'm doing great, I leave that meeting totally drained and have to put my head on my desk for like a minute.
Yeah.
Because it is stressful. I mean, for me, it is stressful to talk to people.
Right, yeah.
It is like to deal with talking to your boss who has your fate in their hands. And if you propose something that you don't like, who knows what repercussions that's going to have. It could mean a whole day's work goes down the drain, or it could mean
you're fired.
Looking for a new job.
Yeah.
The fact that all of these little stressors can affect your character in the game, on top of there's a pterodactyl in the observatory and nobody knows how it got there, but we got to get rid of it. Or there is a Hound of Tindalos in the mall attacking people who order coffee. Got to deal with that.
Gonna do it.
All of these things add up in a way that feels very human in its absurdity. The same way you would want the same way The Office does or Scrubs does.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Scott is not a real boss. And I know everybody jokes that I've had a boss like Michael Scott. No, you haven't. That person absolutely got fired at some point. Like, that person did not last as long as Michael Scott did. But that's why we watch The Office. I don't, but that's why The Office was watched, is because of Michael Scott and his ridiculousness. Yeah,
and you can explore those same sort of like ridiculous extremes in InSpectres in a way that feels very natural.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of hacks and expansions for this game that do different things, such as Unspeakable, that hacks the game for Lovecraftian horror play. But I wonder if you messed with the game, if you messed with the horror comedy scale of the game, right? Like, if we're talking about the absurdity of this game, how scary can we make it while still making it feel real? Or how comedic can we make it while still making it feel real? Because I think that's where this game gets its meat, is that making it feel real even though it's still absurd. So how can we play with that scale while still making it feel real?
Yeah, I don't know what this game would be like. I feel like you would lose something if you tried to do like CSI or NCIS or something that was intended to be more serious, Law and Order.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what it's for. I guess you could do that. I don't think that's what I would want to do with it, though. I don't think I would want to go darker or more serious. I would want to revel in that absurdity stress versus that more realistic stress. I think just by the nature of the way stats are named, keeping your cool, losing your cool, like stress rolls.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it should be played to that level of seriousness.
Yeah.
Or like heaviness. I guess not seriousness, but heaviness.
Yeah. And there's no rules for death in this game.
Right.
If you get super stressed out and all your stats hit 0 and you can't do anything anymore, you can always narrate that your character dies, because since you have control over that narration, you could say that if you want. But if you don't, your character just goes on vacation. Like, they take a break, they take PTO and don't show up to work for a little while until their stats reset. I do wonder what would happen if we played this game darker, but I don't think it would hit its full potential the way I feel like it does right now.
Yeah, I agree. But I think on the flip side, if you tried to play this like it was Big Bang Theory or something, I think you would also lose something.
Oh, yeah.
I think you would lose something if you tried too hard to make it like strictly comedic, very funny. I just think you would lose something. Not that I'm not saying that Big Bang Theory is like a super funny show. I was just trying to think of a slapstick sort of funny show that's out there.
Yeah, I think that balance is what really lets this game sing.
I agree.
Our next segment is Return with the Elixir. These are other books, movies, games, music that would inspire or also explores these ideas in a different or similar way. Diana, what did you have to suggest?
So, I have two shows. One is Supernatural. I'm changing that. I'm going to talk about number 2, and then I'm going to come back to number 1.
Okay.
So number 2 is Superstore. I think it's hilarious. I think it's so funny. But it's just about these knockoff Walmart employees doing hijinks and living their best lives at a not 24-hour Walmart. Like, that's the story. That's it. It's all the bureaucracy. It's all the nonsense. It's a little bit of that reality TV show kind of stuff, but it's mainly the nonsense. Like, it's just the BS of working for a company that doesn't care about you.
Yeah.
That's what that show is about.
I've been very resistant to Superstore, but I think the reason that I don't like Superstore is also the reason I think it would make very good inspiration for InSpectres, which is I hate all of the characters in Superstore. No one in Parks and Rec, everyone, for the most part, every character was a good person that you wanted to root for and you wanted to succeed. In Superstore, it's the exact opposite. Everyone is bad and cynical and mean and selfish, and I hate them. And while I don't know if that makes for good television, in my opinion, it would make for a great role-playing game.
Yeah, but I feel like they are more real than Leslie Knope, who I love, and I would love to know a Leslie Knope. But I don't know if she's a real person. But Amy from Superstore, she's real. She's me, and she's real. But back to number 1. I'm sorry. I'm going to bogart this for a little bit.
Okay.
So back to number 1, Supernatural. There is a whole character arc, kind of. They reappear in lots of episodes. The Ghost Facer boys, who are literal ghost hunters who keep encountering... Well, they're not literal ghost hunters. Like, they film themselves pretending to ghost hunt, except they think they're really doing it. And then they just, stumble into the Supernatural guys, the Winchester boys, doing their actual ghost hunting, doing their actual supernatural stuff. In just about every episode that the Ghost Facers show up in, the Supernatural episode is filmed like a reality TV show. And it's dark, and you get those, snippets of conversation or you get those kind of confessional booth sort of feeling. They don't actually have a confessional booth, but you get that sort of feeling from some of the the transitions and stuff. Those episodes feel like this game on the darker end of that slide. There's also the Prophet in the series who ends up, I'm not going to spoil it. There's the Prophet who writes a series about the Winchester boys and narrates their lives, and it's again this game on a darker scale. And now I'm done.
Okay.
I could go on about Supernatural forever.
I know you could, but this is not a Supernatural recap cast.
Okay.
I would like to... my suggestions are Bubba Hotep, which is an older movie starring Bruce Campbell as an elderly man in a nursing home who believes he's Elvis. It's a 2002 American comedy horror film. Bruce Campbell thinks he's Elvis Presley. It also stars Ossie Davis, who thinks that he is JFK, who survived the assassination. And they are tasked with fighting against a cursed Egyptian mummy in their nursing home. It is very much about absurd fish out of water comedy horror, people trying to fight back against unknown forces while just kind of dealing with their normal lives. Like normal being slightly relative. Bruce Campbell thinks he's Elvis, but is still just an old man trying to fight a cursed mummy.
Right.
I also think a good suggestion is the podcast Bubble. That's an audio drama from Maximum Fun. It is like if Buffy was part of a rideshare app style monster hunting service called Hunter, no E, which is, I think it's 6 to 8 episodes long. It's really good, really funny. Also horror comedy, monster hunter, trying to pay off rent while hunting monsters.
Yes.
One game that does explore the absurdity of bureaucracy and corporate culture is Mission Accomplished by Jeff Stormer. That's a newer game that just kickstarted a few months ago, but it is all about trying to explain your decisions to your boss and having them always find a way to...
be mad at you.
Yes.
Yeah. And it all takes place after you've already done your mission. That's it is strictly that bureaucracy stuff, but it's super fun.
Yeah. And then finally, a story that I'd like to tell with this game is I would really like, along the same lines as Bubble, I'd love to do a modern app-style InSpectres business. akin to like Uber, but you are monster hunting.
Yeah.
I think that would be an interesting way to do this game one-on-one, since a lot of those are very like self-driven, self-made. I think that would be interesting because it would be corporate culture very much more on the side of facing the clientele.
Right.
You have a lot more clientele and employee interaction than you do like employee upper management interaction. But dealing with the people who would call you on your app or who would request you to come out to their house and ghost bust for them,
Right.
I think would be rife with comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would work fairly well. I'd be very interested in trying that out.
Yeah, I agree. I would just really like to, like, these people are ridiculous. I'd really like to tell the Kardashians fighting ghosts and ghouls and other worldly nasties.
Now, I saw that on the show notes. And so the Kardashians being very self-made, how would that affect, like, are you thinking...
I'm thinking literally Kim and Kanye have a ghost in their house, and instead of hiring somebody, they just are like, yeah, we can do this ourselves, and just start trying to do that. But it's literally Kanye West and Kim Kardashian.
So going real hard on the reality TV aspect
Yes.
of InSpectres and the
Very
less-
hard on that, yeah.
Can I ask what you think you would do with like the franchise dice in that situation? Would it?
I mean, I think it would be the Kardashian franchise.
It would be like literally like their
You're paying-
brand.
Yeah, you're paying into the family name. Like, the more successful you are with this, the more Instagram likes you're going to get, which pays
my
into the
God.
family name, which makes Kendall Jenner much more of a model because she's walking down with a poltergeist, and it makes Kylie Jenner with her new baby and her fake lips, like, way bigger because now her fake lips are filled with ectoplasm. Like, what? Everybody's on Instagram trying to find out what's going on.
I actually really like that idea of like playing with your own brand. and
As opposed to, like, a franchise.
Yeah, trying to keep your own brand alive, like your own social media brand versus the corporate brand. And
Yeah.
again, that would cut down on the corporate culture aspect. But
Except when your momager is Kris Jenner. Is she still Kris Jenner?
did you just say momager?
That is a real name, momager.
No.
Mom manager. That's
All
a real
right.
thing.
That's
It's a real thing.
wrapping up. We are done with this. So yeah, that was InSpectres. This is The Farrier's Bellows. The Farrier's Bellows is a production of The Gauntlet. You can find us on Twitter at GauntletRPG. You can find us on our website at gauntlet-rpg.com, and we are on Patreon at patreon.com/gauntlet, where you can contribute to The Gauntlet and support more great shows like ours.
Thanks to Zack B., our editor, for making this show listenable. You can find us on iTunes, where you can rate and subscribe to us.
Yes. You can also find us on Twitter at Farrier's Bellows. Talk to us and talk about us. We'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear about your InSpectres games or any other games that you are playing right now.
Absolutely. And remember, you cannot dream yourself into a character. You must hammer and forge yourself one.
Until next time, remember to follow your ammunition receipts with finances.